there's always a little tinge of sadness when very good players, when good people decide to hang up their boots. Is that kind of feeling I have as I sit down to say thank you very much to a player that I have admired enormously over the years and who have enjoyed batting because he brought his very distinct personality to the game. When you think of a player like Pujara, when you think of anybody who's played as long as he has, the numbers tell a story, and the numbers are very good for Pujara. 100 test matches, 7,000 runs, 1900s. A lot of people will be very, very proud of that, and they tell a very good story. But there's also a story that they do not tell, a story of resilience, of defiance, not just against the bowling, but in life itself. Personal tragedy, injury. Now, we won't go into the rest. But Puji, you fought all that and you came up and produced a career that you can be very proud of, that your family can be very, very proud of. And yes, I think of you and I think defiance. And my mind kept going back to so many of those great innings that you played. I mean, there was that 100 in Southampton when everybody else was struggling. I remember that one very well. Of course, Colombo, you told me about Colombo recently. When we were in England, you were struggling to get back into the Indian side. The only spot available was as an opener. You went in there and you batted all through the innings. I know the one in South Africa would have given you a lot of joy, that one in Johannesburg. What about that one in Mumbai? People remember it for Kevin Peterson's great innings. But the ball was turning square. You got a fabulous 100 in that innings. Then Ranchi has to be against Australia. 11 hours almost of batting, 525 balls. Wow. But if there is a lasting memory, it is of watching you play in Australia. 2018, I was there. When I went there, I know Australia were a little depleted. But in my mind, I had been told you do not beat Australia in Australia. Then that first 100 in Adelaide, then two others. And then when India won that series, you had such a big part to play in it. And yet, it's 2021 that you remember more. All those bounces that you took, that innings in Brisbane was wow. And that is why, of all the hundreds that you score, there's two other innings that I remember very, very fondly. Two half centuries. I mean, I remember when Sunil Gavaskar finished, of all the 100 that he scored, he remembered a couple of 50s with great warmth. He was very proud of those. And I think you can be very proud of that one in Johannesburg in 2018. You took, what, 53 balls to get off your 100? But it didn't matter to you because you were out there doing a job for the side. It's something that you always did very well. And then the innings I referred to briefly, there in Brisbane. They're aiming it at your body and you're taking the blows. You do that for 211 balls because that test match in Brisbane was one of the greatest test matches India's ever played. India basically picking anyone who was available and you had to show the way. And you hung in there. You denied Australia and then Pant went and finished it. And it led to that great line, didn't it? That the Indian economy needs both a Pant and a Pujara, and it just tells you how much a part of cricketing folklore in India you have become. If I had to think of one visual that defined you, I'll actually think of two because they both often came back to back. It is the spinner tossing it up and you using your feet right down there to the pitch of the ball and hitting it wide of mid-on. Occasionally to mid-wicket, but largely wide of mid-on because you were that straight. Lion to Pujara will be one of the great battles. But you always followed that up. And I waited for that when you were batting. When you came down 3 or 4 balls, I knew my favorite shot was coming. When you just sat back, and boom, you hit it fast point for 4. So use of the feet, that is something I enjoyed. Your battles against spin will remain the second overriding image in my life after you standing up to fast bowling. You know, I think of you, and I've used the word defiance very often. But my image of you going out to bat and hanging in there is one. I always thought there was the India logo there. There was a bat in your hand, but there was always the India flag around somewhere. I always got the feeling that you're willing to do what it took for India. And that is something that a younger generation, I hope, will imbibe, this great bravery, this great ability to be a team player at all times. And And that was fantastic. And you hung in there. You became a metaphor for resilience. When I did a talk at IIM Ahmedabad some years ago, I told everyone, be like Pujara. You will face tough times in life, but if you don't hang in the tough times, how will you score runs when the good times emerge? And to me, you were always a metaphor for that. On that 2018 tour, when you were just batting and batting and batting, and I was working with Fox Sport on that tour, and they said, doesn't Pujara get bored of batting? And I had to remind them that you got your first triple when you were, what, 13 years old? By the time you were 15, 16, you had planted your address. Every time you went out to bat, you sort of planted your address at the crease. And one of my favorite sledges came there. I think it might have been Tim Payne who told you, geez, Puji said, I'm seeing much more of you than I'm seeing my partner these days. And you smiled at him and you just kept on batting and batting and batting. And the Aussies turned to me and said, where is our Pujara? You were a symbol of what Australia did not have in that series and the respect that you had all across Australia that year. And the Aussies, not very easy with that respect. They're not very liberal with it. They absolutely loved you. So Puji, congratulations on a fantastic career. It was great to get to know you so well recently. The deep thought that you bring to your profession, the calmness, the humility, the simplicity, the ability to let a little sledge go sometimes, especially when you talk of the style quotient of some of your colleagues in the commentary box. In fact, I opened the cupboard, you know how it is. I normally just put on a polo shirt. And I thought, right, which one should I put on? And I said, no, for me, Cheteshwar Pujara is white. Cheteshwar Pujara goes out to bat in white. And even though the background is a little mild, I put on a white t-shirt and I said, now that is something that he will stand for. Don't know what you think of the style quotient associated with that. And as you hang up your boots, you can be so mighty proud of what you did for your father. I met him once, remember that day in Nottingham, and I thought I saw two people in there. I saw a cricket tragic, and I saw someone who loved his son very, very deeply, who was almost living his life through his son, especially after the tragedy with the loss of your mother early on, and you did him so proud. Wish you well. Hope you have lots more time with Pooja and Aditi and all those costumes that she puts together for you. And I hope you continue to have a lot of time for Indian cricket. And I hope newer generations come in and they say, you know what to do when the going gets tough? When the going gets tough, you become a Pujara. My last thought. Sachin Tendulkar said to me at one point that his father told him, long after you're done with the game, people will remember you for the person you were. Not everybody passes that test. You do. Cheers. I put together a top 10 for you. I don't know if you'll agree, but for all those of you watching this vlog, this tribute to a very fine player, these are the top 10.
So thank you for watching and do subscribe to this channel.